Hey guys, this is Count OF with another episode of Mock Advice, and today I am talking about creatures. So I'm just gonna kind of throw around some tips of things that I think work decently with a lot of these odd mocks that I have laying around. Most of them animals, and then of course I got my little gremlin character. So let's just start. Let's get this thing going. So with the Dermis turtle, I've already done a whole instructions for this guy, so there's not a ton to say. But obviously, in terms of like advice you can take away. Using connections to spare your purse to the original design of this put a lot of pressure on these pieces here, and as you can see there's cracks here from what that did. Actually, that might just be there because these cheap pieces are kind of cheap, but whatever. Point is, this little rubber band helps keep things pressured. Knowing where to use pieces like Lego rubber bands is good to make any mock work, and especially when you're working on a small scale of something like the Dermis turtle. And of course, as I've mentioned before, his little brain there is pressured in as well. It's kind of odd techniques, but whatever works to get the exact shape you're going for if you're designing creatures, particularly on a small scale. In a similar vein, in terms of like using pressure to make things stick and work, I have my rocket bite made for a thing Shadowgear did years ago. All of those characters revolved around having Zamor spheres as eyes. And I thought it would be a fun idea to try and do two of them and have them look kind of like fun derpy eyes. So obviously these are not attached in any kind of way, as they aren't attached in any Lego set. They're usually just used as projectiles. But here I have them pressured in with this lift arm here, and things are kind of just tightly pushed around to kind of keep them in. And they're pretty stable in there, and they're not falling out easily. So it's important to use any techniques you can to try and keep whatever isn't connected by an X or a pin or whatever joint connection you're looking for, to try and pressure it in a good way that's going to work and make the figure workable. I think that's good. That's cool. As far as my bird, I made this on a live stream. There's not a ton to say. He uses some fairly standard techniques using Technic panels, wings, and I do think it is kind of fun using these 2.0 Hero Factory pieces, kind of like a tail fin thing. But I think just making sure you use whatever pieces you have available. It's a pretty common lesson I'm sure I've said 100 times, but yeah, any pieces you have to look for any connection points you can get. Obviously, this is not the most commonly used piece in Technic. It's not particularly helpful, particularly because the axle hole it has is loose. But of course here it works kind of nice as a little simplistic bird head. And of course it has a nice joint here where I was able to just use a red robot claw connected to a telephone. And he's got a really posable head now. And you can kind of get some fun, quirky bird poses out of it. And of course, just since his eyes are just two big green line ball joints, he just gets kind of a nice, simple feel for his face. And you can get a little bit of emotion, I guess, out of the way he can turn his head and move things around. So, not like the greatest thing ever, but just some little things you can play around with in terms of what pieces you're using specifically. Let's talk about the gremlin. He has no real specific name. I just like calling him the gremlin, or goblin rather. Whatever. He's a goblin, actually. Point is, the main technique I'd like to just advise is lift arms are super helpful, and you can really use them in 100 different ways. And here was one of my more creative ways of actually using different colored lift arms to make a face of some kind with the eyes here. All these pieces here are lift arms, and it's not the best looking shaping ever, but it is pretty clear what's going on here with the red eyes there, and using the little gearbox as the mouth. And then just using other pieces around to kind of fill out the shaping of the torso head. And I think my favorite part actually is using the Liwa 2001 hands to kind of fill out his head there. It's, just as I've said before, use whatever Technic bits. Technic is a really helpful line in order of filling out pieces on Bionicle mocs, and really any kind of mocs you're working, particularly with kind of posability stuff. Obviously his limbs are entirely simplistic Technic builds, so That works out okay. I mean, it's not particularly creative, but yeah, he's a tiny little character, and I use him for fairly comedic stuff there, so that was fine. The last one is just more so an example of taking something that already exists and trying to work off of it and make it something that you can at least be somewhat proud of, or just not even necessarily be proud of, but just make it workable. I've trashed the original Dermis turtle before, and I make no apologies for it. No, I'm kidding. A kid made it. It was cute at the time, but it wasn't exactly a great mock. So obviously for a storyline thing, I redid it. So that's why his color scheme's odd. So I didn't really try to fix that. But in terms of trying to make like a similar shaped thing, I wanted to go for a unique shell that uses different pieces that, to be fair, the kid didn't have in 2003. So that's fine. I should cut him some slack. But yeah, using the slicer heads to kind of fill out the body as a little torso there. I particularly like the way I've just kind of angled some of these weapons here to fill out the shape of this big shell that he's got. Just making sure you look at every single angle you can use pieces to achieve the look you're going for. Obviously, I was doing this exactly like the original set. He's got the Galak silver piece angled like this. The head is different, but and then of course, in a similar vein to using pressuring pieces in. Using tubes to get the angles filled in. When I started building this, I'm thinking, how the heck am I going to get this really ugly, awkward-looking back to look kind of smooth? All you really need is a tube that can kind of bend, and you just kind of pressure it into the axle there, and you connect it to a piece like that. I mean, it doesn't look like the most beautiful thing ever, but it fills out the gap, so it doesn't look as ridiculous. So, yeah, that's one little thing you can take away. And the last thing I'll say in terms of, making mocks particularly, this is an important one I haven't talked about. Try finishing them. Commit to what you make. And also don't run yourself into corners as well. This was a fun thing I started building, and I probably would have finished it if I had more ideas for how to connect to a body from here. And I have joints. There are ways I could do it. But try not to build yourself into corners with limited options just for your own mental sake, because if it's not easy, then you're just going to probably give up and not end up doing it. But like I did with this thing. But who knows, maybe I will at some point use the connection points I still have, or maybe rework this back here to try and make it work, because I think this is could be kind of a cool, weird looking horse thing if I properly finished it. But yeah, that's basically all there is to say about these figures. Just creatures are really fun to make for filling out whatever characters you might have and looking unique in terms of a lot of the standard Matoran or Toa builds you may have around. So I would recommend playing around and challenging yourself to build out of the norm. I know I don't do it enough, but it's a good thing to do. So yeah, I'm going to have a little information in the description about some stuff that's been going on with video production stuff, but so you can look at that. But thank you guys for watching. I'm going to have more animations coming this month. And yeah, thank you for staying tuned. I love you all. Take care.